What if everything you've been chasing is actually making you weaker? Not the obvious stuff, not the bad habits, not the toxic relationships, but the ambition itself, the wanting. The relentless hunger for more that modern culture tells you is the mark of a winner. What if that hunger is actually the leash keeping you controlled? That's not a comfortable question. And the Stoics didn't deal in comfortable questions. They dealt in useful ones. Today, we're going deep into one of the most misunderstood and honestly underutilized ideas in Stoic philosophy, the idea that desire, unchecked desire, is not your engine, it's your cage. And the art of wanting less isn't about giving up or checking out. It's about becoming genuinely untouchable in a way that no amount of achievement ever gave you. Stay with me, because by the end of this, the way you look at your own ambitions is going to shift. And that shift is worth more than anything you're currently chasing. Let's start with something Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, the Meditations, a book, remember, that was never meant to be published. He wrote it for himself. And in it, he kept returning to one haunting idea, that the things we desire most have a way of mastering us. He was the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. He had everything, and he spent his private hours warning himself against wanting more of it. Think about that. The emperor, alone with his thoughts, writing reminders to himself not to be seduced by the very power he already held. What does that tell you? It tells you that desire doesn't care how much you already have. It just moves the goalpost. It always moves the goalpost. Now, here's where modern culture gets this completely backwards. We celebrate desire. We put it on motivational posters. We turn ambitious people into gods and call their restlessness a virtue. Hustle culture worships the wanting. More followers, more income, more status, more validation. And if you're not wanting hard enough, you're told you don't deserve success. But the Stoics saw something that we've collectively forgotten. They understood that desire creates dependency. The moment you need something to feel okay, that thing owns you. It doesn't matter if it's a person, a paycheck, a title, or the number of likes on your last post. If your internal state is hostage to an external outcome, you have handed your power away, freely, voluntarily. Epictetus understood this better than almost anyone. He was a slave, literally owned by another human being, and yet he arrived at a freedom that most people living in total physical liberty never experience. How? Because he drew an absolute line between what was within his control and what wasn't. And desire, specifically the unguarded, undisciplined craving for things outside that line, was the primary way people destroyed their own peace. He wasn't saying don't have goals. He wasn't saying lie down and let life happen to you. He was saying something far more precise and far more radical. He was saying that your desire for the outcome is what makes you fragile. The work itself, the process, the effort that you can own. But attach your identity to the result, and you've given the universe a remote control pointed directly at your emotional state. This is where we have to talk about something called the discipline of desire, which is actually one of the 3 core disciplines in Stoic practice, and it might be the most important one that nobody talks about. The discipline of desire says this: train yourself to want only what is genuinely good and genuinely within your reach. Specifically, train yourself to want virtue above everything else. Not because virtue is some abstract, noble concept, but because virtue is the one thing that cannot be taken from you by circumstance, by other people, by failure, or by time. When you want wealth and you lose it, you're devastated. When you want approval and someone withdraws it, you're destabilized. When you want status and someone surpasses you, you're threatened. But when what you primarily want is to be a person of integrity, of courage, of clear thinking, what exactly can the world take from you? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's not weakness. That's a kind of psychological armor that no external success can buy. Now, let's address the counter-argument, because it's coming. People will say, if you stop wanting things intensely, you lose motivation, you become passive, you stop growing. And look, that concern is fair. But it's based on a misunderstanding of what the Stoics were actually proposing. The Stoics were not advocates for passivity. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire and led armies. Cato fought political battles until his last breath. Seneca was one of the most productive writers in the ancient world. These were not passive men. What they practiced was something different. It's called preferred indifference. They worked hard toward preferred outcomes while remaining genuinely indifferent to whether those outcomes materialized. They gave full effort without full emotional attachment. That's the paradox, and it's a real one. You can pursue excellence without needing excellence to validate your existence. You can build something without that thing becoming the measure of your worth. In fact, the people who build the most sustainably are often the ones who've learned to detach from the outcome just enough to stay clear-headed when things go wrong. Because things will go wrong. They always do. And the people who fall apart when they do are almost always the ones who wanted the outcome so badly that they couldn't function without it. Their desire was so strong it became a structural weakness. A crack in the foundation, one good storm, and it collapses. Here's a practical angle on this. Think about the last time you desperately wanted something, maybe a job, a relationship, a particular result. Now think about how you showed up in pursuit of it. Were you clear? Were you calm? Were you strategic? Or were you anxious, second-guessing yourself, overthinking every move because the stakes felt impossibly high? That desperation you felt, that was your desire working against you. The wanting itself degraded your performance. The Stoics would recognize that immediately, and they would say, this is exactly why we train the desire first. Not the skill, not the discipline of action, the desire. Because if you can master what you want and how tightly you hold it, everything else becomes cleaner, clearer, more effective. Wanting less is not about lowering your standards. Let's be crystal clear on that. It's about raising your self-awareness to the point where you stop confusing what you've been told to want with what you actually need to function at your highest level. Most of what we pursue is inherited desire. Somebody else's definition of success downloaded into us through culture, through social media, through comparison. And we run ourselves into the ground chasing a finish line someone else drew. The Stoic practice of examining desire is fundamentally about reclaiming authorship over your own values. It's asking the hard question, if nobody could see this, would I still want it? If there were no external reward, would I still pursue it? And if the answer is no, that's valuable information. That desire is borrowed. And borrowed desires are the most exhausting ones to maintain. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to impermanence. He would remind himself that everything he desired, everything he feared losing, would eventually be gone, not as a reason for despair, but as a reason for freedom. If it's all temporary anyway, why let temporary things permanently dictate your peace? The art of wanting less is ultimately the art of wanting more wisely. It's stripping away the noise until you can hear what actually matters. And what actually matters, the Stoics would tell you, is never the thing you were chasing. It was always the person you were becoming in the chase. That's the practice. That's the art. And it starts the moment you stop treating your desires as your identity and start treating them as something you can examine, question, and if necessary, let go.